And today's sit is sponsored by Susan Myberg in memory of her father, Albert Irving Milberg. May her father continue to rest in peace and his spirit be remembered in the hearts of family and friends who are still living. Yehi zichro livracha. Thank you so much, Susan, for lifting up his memory and supporting our practice. And with that, we'll begin. So I invite you to settle in, to perhaps find 3 points of contact. It could be your feet on the ground and your seat on the cushion, or if you're lying down, it could be your back and your tush and your feet, to create a tripod. Al shlosha devarim ha'olam omed. Pirkei Avot says the world is sustained by 3 things, and we learn actually that our practice is supported by 3 points of contact. There is a steadying effect when we cannot just be in 1 point of contact with the ground or with our support, but in 3. So to create 3 points of contact for the duration of this practice, and I'll invite you to gently close your eyes, roll back your shoulders, wiggle out your jaw, loosen your eyelids and your cheekbones. Take notice of any tension or constriction or pain in your feet and your ankles, your legs, your knees, your thighs, your hips, these large muscles that support the weight of the body and make movement possible in different ways for all of our different bodies. Taking note of the wrists, and the elbows, these points of transition, reaching and grabbing and holding and tying, washing and folding, the work of our hands in this world, typing, painting. As the body settles, I invite you to turn your attention gently to your breath. Allow the breath to deepen and settle. For those who were with us yesterday, we were practicing having the exhale be longer than the inhale. And we'll begin there again. For me, this is connected to the Hanukkah miracle that we could put a small amount of oil in and get 8 nights of light from it, that we can stretch the resource so we can take a small amount of breath in and we can lengthen and extend the miracle of the exhale, the letting go, the gentle release. Breathing is at once an involuntary action, something our body can just do. But we learn that we actually have habits around how we breathe, and we can actually train and retrain our relationship to our breath to support more mindful and peaceful ways of being. Rise and fall of the stomach. Slow inhale and the even slower exhale. We learn from the morning liturgy, Elohai neshama shenatata bi tehorahi. The soul you've put in me, Holy One, is pure, is ritually worthy, is tahor. I was thinking about this relative to the light and the oil of Hanukkah. I was thinking about, the clearest extra virgin olive oil, right? That oil that is itself described in the Hanukkah liturgy as pure oil, right? It's clear, it's been pressed and refined, cold pressed, not to change its nature. To imagine that we are sort of cold pressed, fresh, extra virgin olive oil. Our soul is pure and full of potential. Oil makes heat possible, heat for our food, heat for our homes. It's a lubricant. It reduces friction. It creates more easeful connection. The rise and fall of the stomach, the noticing of the thoughts and the stories as they arise, the noticing of judgment, feelings of inadequacy or pain or resistance, and the reminder that we are pure. We are pure oil. Our souls are tahor. They are clear channels, vessels for holiness. Elohai neshama shenatata bi, the soul that was put into each and every one of you, is fundamentally good, is needed, has the capacity to burn bright and clear And this practice of returning again and again to the breath and to the settling of the mind, it's a practice of actually purification. Reducing the clutter and the stress of the mind so that we can think more clearly, more creatively, more calmly, so that we can actually endure more and be more effective in our response to the suffering in this world. Rise and fall of the stomach. Gentle return to your anchor. The needed reminder that you are pure, that you are light. Perhaps in our practice, we notice antsiness or anticipation. When will the bell ring? This too has sort of a Hanukkah moment within it. Like, do I have the discipline to last all 30 minutes? Or in the future wanting it to end, maybe. Or maybe we're in the future wanting it never to end. Don't make me go back to whatever is waiting for me on the other side. Either way, we can notice we're grasping or pushing away what is, to remind ourselves that we have enough, that we can be in this moment. The rise and fall of the stomach. Slow inhale and the even slower exhale. The willingness to be with what is, to notice its pleasure and its displeasure, to notice boredom, to notice restlessness, to notice delight. To close, I'll offer you the words of the beautiful Palestinian poet Mahmoud Darwish. He writes in his poem, "Think of others." As you prepare breakfast, think of others. Do not forget the pigeon's food. As you conduct your wars, think of others. Do not forget those who seek peace. As you pay your water bill, think of others, those who are nursed by clouds. As you return home to your home, think of others. Do not forget the people of the camps. As you sleep and count the stars, think of others, those who have nowhere to sleep. As you liberate yourself in metaphor, think of others, those who have lost the right to speak. As you think of others far away, think of yourself and say, if only I were a candle in the dark. Thank you for your practice and turning things over to Rabbi Mark Margolius.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Ari Lev, and thank you so much for holding our space from the get-go. And as always, we seal our practice today by offering an opportunity for those of you who are in mourning or observing a yard site, or if it's your custom to join in the mourner's Kaddish, to do so. For those who are not reciting Kaddish, we ask that you stay present and offer your support and attention for those who are. And thanks to Jet Bachman, who's holding our text space today, for sharing the words on the screen. And if you are reciting Kaddish, I invite you to join me by rising in body or spirit, and you can unmute at this time. And friends, thank you so much again for joining us today. I want to thank Rabbi Ari Lev Fornari for leading us beautifully in the second of this 5-session series, and special appreciation for holding our space at the get-go. Since Josh Fagelson was not able to join us, I'm glad I was able to hop on and be here for this. Thank you so much, Rabbi Ari Lev. And going to just scroll up. I want to thank Susan Milberg for sponsoring. I'm just going to, Jet, if you wouldn't mind putting the dedication for this sit again back in the chat, which I missed, for Susan's dedication, if you're able to do that. And thank you so much. I want to thank Susan Milberg, who's one of our regulars, for sponsoring the practice in loving memory of your dad, Albert Irving Milberg. Zichrono Livracha. May he continue to rest b'shalom, in peace, and may his neshama, may his soul, be remembered in the hearts of family and friends who are still living, and may his neshama shine brightly in these days and always illuminate the path for you, Susan, and for your family, and for all who knew him. And thank you so much, as always, for supporting our collective practice today. Thanks to Jet Bachman for holding our space. As always, you're invited to stay on for a conversation, questions and answers with our teacher today, Rabbi Ari Lev Fornari of Kol Tzedek Synagogue in West Philadelphia. And if you're leaving us now, we'll hope you'll join us tomorrow. Rabbi Ari Lev will be leading us all week in this beautiful practice about expanding our inner light through Hanukkah. And it's just such a blessing for us to have this opportunity to really immerse so deeply in our bodies, in our breath, in our being, in the themes of this Chag. So thank you for being here. If you do have a question, please put it in the chat and preface it by writing question in all caps. And otherwise, you can, of course, as always, just share reflections on your experience with the sit today, and or use this time and space in this container, this community, just to continue to sit and practice with us. Thank you for, thanks, Sorry, Liv. Well done. I think I'm out of a job. You're hired. Really, I'm glad I got here, and I'm glad I was able to do this live. I was going to watch the recording. The focus on this pure oil, the pureness of the oil, and the connection you made with the neshama, our souls, which are, as you reminded us, are essentially good and pure. I want to invite you to talk a little bit about the connection between cultivating awareness of the pureness, goodness of our own soul, our own essence, and the Darwish poem that you ended with, which was about remembering others, right? What would you say about how remembering our, starting with our own, focusing on our own neshama, our own pureness, our own goodness, can lead to that kind of empathy, would you say? That's a question that came up for me.
Yeah.
And when you're talking to remember others, like, because that's not, we're starting with, okay, let's remember ourselves first, then let's remember others, right? So what do you think? And I'll keep an eye on questions in the chat as well.
I'll give you a long answer to this one, Mark.
That's good.
And it's a timely answer. I spent the summer of 2006 in Israel and Palestine. I was intending to mostly spend time in Israel, and I ultimately mostly spent time in the West Bank, living in Ramallah. And when I got back, I was very broken. I was really bereft. I was traumatized by the violence that I witnessed in the West Bank, and really grieving my relationship to the state of Israel and to sort of the American Jewish community's relationship to the state of Israel. And I had post-traumatic stress disorder, and I was depressed, and so I went to a therapist, and I was telling all of this to a therapist, and he said, I'm not hearing your ability to have compassion for yourself. Like, you've been through something really hard, and you don't seem to have any compassion for yourself. And I was like, what's compassion? Like, really, I was like, I don't think I've ever even heard that word before. This was 2006, yet another moment when Israel was at war with Gaza and Lebanon. So I was 24 years old, and I really don't think I had ever heard that word before. And so this is actually the same therapist who ultimately taught me to meditate. That's actually how I learned to meditate, was trying to heal from trauma and anxiety that I incurred while spending time in Israel and Palestine. So it's sort of very present for me that its beginnings are sort of also taking root and sustaining me in these times. And so I said, I don't know, how do you develop compassion for yourself? And this therapist said, well, according to the Buddha, if you want to have compassion for yourself, you need to practice having compassion for others. And I said, well, I don't know what it means to have compassion for others. And he said, well, according to the Buddha, if you want to have compassion for others, you need to practice having compassion for yourself. So I say this with total sincerity, but I hope at least a few of you on mute laughed, sort of, you're like in therapy and you're like, I'm hitting myself against this wall. You're like, I'm paying you for this advice. I'm paying you for this age-old wisdom from the Buddha. Like, I could have read that in a book. I have no idea what you're talking about. But really, like, it's been 20 years of trying to understand how having compassion for others can cultivate it in myself, and having compassion for myself can cultivate it for others. And a lot of this has to do with the texture of the heart. And so when the heart is open, We have when we cultivate compassion for ourselves, we then will naturally have it for others. And sometimes actually it doesn't really matter where you start. This is what I've learned.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter if it's easier to have compassion for others, start there.
Mm-hmm.
If it's easier to have compassion for yourself, start there. And that's
Mm-hmm.
not a static thing. That's not like a who you are as a person, but just like in any given moment, especially with the practice of metta, the practice of sort of cultivating loving kindness and compassion in the heart. I mean, of the sort of sense feelings of the heart of these holy ways of being, compassion is actually slightly different from metta. Metta really is more like chesed, like loving kindness.
Mm-hmm.
And compassion in the Pali is actually karuna. It's actually a separate quality, but they go together and they're hard to differentiate. And the open heart can feel compassion for ourselves and for others more easily. And so whatever we can do to open the heart is where we begin. And so for me, sometimes it's easier to think of others, and that's what led me to the Darwish poem. The other thing that led me there is, well, so much of it is so relevant, right? In times of war, don't forget those who seek peace.
Mm-hmm.
But also in this practice, as you liberate yourself in metaphor, think of those who have lost the right to speak. Certainly, we're living in a moment of profound censorship, and here we're meditating, and meditation is for me a liberation practice.
Mm-hmm.
But then the last line also just called me to Hanukkah.
Sure. Yeah.
Others far away, which I know so many of us are thinking of people in Israel and Gaza. Think of yourself and say, if only I were a candle in the dark. And that's sort of what we're here trying to be.
Right.
So
Right.
this connection we have, our how we view others and how we view ourselves, and then knowing that that our capacity to be caring and compassionate it's just so interconnected.
Thank you for sharing all of that and for your vulnerability. There is a question. I want to wait. I'm going to scroll back up because I was looking at some of the other questions. Oh, here it is. Okay, thank you. This is from Margaret. Interesting. Not sure if we have to unpack this question a little bit, I think. I'm having a bit of difficulty with the evaluative binary aspect of purity.
Mm.
Not that I consider myself and others as impure. How can we affirm the wholeness and beauty of souls, mutilated as we are, broken as or imperfect as we are, as we in the world mostly are, without dichotomies implied? Can you parse that question?
Yeah. I sort of treaded lightly as I was sort of feeling called to teach this concept of sort of the pure oil. Pure
Mm-hmm.
in English is not the right word. We don't have the right word. So in the Hebrew it's tahor, and its contrast is tameh, which most often through the book of Leviticus and the priestly tradition is thought of as pure and impure, which has such a value judgment in it, which has really no place in
Mm-hmm.
practice.
Mm-hmm.
But the probably more accurate translation of those terms is ritually ready and ritually unprepared.
Mm-hmm.
So to be tahor is to be ritually worthy, or to be ready to engage in the work of the world. And for us, when I say ritual, I'm thinking all the ways that we are of service, that we've prepared ourselves for the work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So the pure heart is the ready heart. And the impure heart is the agitated or activated or unready heart, unprepared heart. And certainly we have both within us in different moments. There's certain moments I arrive to and I say, the words of Rabbi Alan Liu, Zichrono Livracha, like his famous book about the high holidays, this is real and you are completely unprepared. Like being unprepared is also a spiritual state. It's the state of being tameh.
Mm-hmm.
The work of meditation is the practice of transforming the heart from tameh to tahor, to
Mm-hmm.
becoming ritually ready for the world, to having a
Mm-hmm.
heart that is primed and prepared for the rigor of our lives.
I really like that. I want to go back for a second to some of the terminology we're using. You were connecting chesed, loving kindness, with metta, and compassion with, what was the term you used for that?
Karuna.
Right. So I was thinking about rachamim as the Hebrew for compassion, which is not identical with chesed, but
It's probably a better translation of karuna. Yep.
uh-huh. But now to go back to this pure heart, or pure soul, pure heart. and I don't know if you're differentiating the two there, but just the concept of being tahor, pure, is not actually, like you're describing, not evaluative. It's not like that's the good soul, right? But it is I really love what you're saying about it being the prepared soul, the soul that's aligned and ready to serve, and to discern that will in a way which gets us out of that place. But you did, when you were in the meditation, I think, and I would say the same thing too, probably, but it's making me rethink it a little bit about using the word good, that we are essentially good, right? Is it that we are essentially good, or that we are essentially divine? Because what I'm getting from you from here, which is helpful, and it's a good question. It was like a provocative question, because I think the mind goes to that binary of good and bad, or I think of myself as problematic. But remember, you're essentially good, is that it's a different paradigm to think of ourselves as manifestations of the divine, who have a choice to align ourselves or not align ourselves at any moment with the divine, and be a channel for that in the world, or to be ready to serve, as you're describing, right? Ready to be a vessel for that in some way. It's just a different paradigm. It gets us out of the good or bad or whole or broken, or so anyway, I'm throwing that out just for thought.
I think for me, I might answer this best through metaphor, which is, let's take Buddhist metaphor and then we'll make it into Hanukkah metaphor. So in the Buddhist metaphor, it's like we are, if you dip your cup into the river and you get out sort of murky water and you give it time, the sediment settles and the water clears.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And so the water is fundamentally clear, but there's sediment in it. The water was always pure. It wasn't like it was dirty water. It was like there was sediment that needed to settle.
Yeah.
If we make that Hanukkah metaphor for anyone who buys really good olive oil, like if you get to the bottom of the olive oil, there's also sediment. There's like that sort of greenish yellow sediment. But if given time to settle, like the oil becomes really clear, which is what they say that the priests used when they lit the oil lamps. They only wanted the clearest, most refined,
right?
Right? The ayin zach, the zayit zach. So there's something about, like, can we clarify?
Mm-hmm.
And there's a maybe a purification in that, but it's about preparedness, not about being good or bad or pure as a state, as a fundamental essence. It's really about the settledness of the practice, the settledness of the water or the sediment of the oil. It makes us more prepared to encounter our lives with more grace and compassion. And so that's what the practice is for.
Yeah, I think that's just a really, really lovely summation of why we're here, what the purpose is. And those terms are really helpful. Clarity, settled, and then what you said, another one just now, ready to serve, or something. Those lines, that's exactly the purpose of this. It's not to pump ourselves up. It's not to counter the negative narratives that we may have in our heads. It is to be clear, and just see if there's any more questions, but I think we probably need to wrap up. All right, Lori, as always, you have a good question. It's a doorknob question, as in therapy terms, it's a doorknob question. So the good news is that Rabbi Ari Lev will be back tomorrow and the rest of the week. So keep the questions coming. And thank you so much, Ari Lev. Beautiful teaching, really. And Jet, thank you, as always, so beautifully. And each of you for being here. And we hope to see you tomorrow to continue with this beautiful theme. Chanukah Sameach, everyone. See you soon. And Chodesh Tov. Tonight we begin the new month of Tevet, and hopefully may it come to us and to all beings for good and for peace.